So in this video, I want to address a fundamental inconsistency within the rhetoric of the pro-choice movement. Because if you've ever engaged in the abortion debate, you will find that most individuals who advocate the current legal status of abortion tend to try and characterize it as a medical operation. And whether or not this is an accurate characterization doesn't really matter for the purpose of this video. For now, it suffices to simply say that they do this. They characterize it as a medical operation, and yet at the same time, they identify themselves as pro-choice as opposed to pro-abortion. Now, there are definitely people out there who are legitimately pro-abortion and who have pro-abortion arguments, but there is a distinction that does need to be made. Being pro-choice is not quite the same thing as being pro-abortion. A pro-abortion individual might justify abortion by claiming that it's a good thing, either in and of itself or because it has positive consequences. Who these consequences benefit varies from one argument to the next. For example, it has been argued that abortion should be legal because it benefits the mother. In the case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, for example, the plaintiff argued that we should blast aside restrictions on abortion because allowing women to obtain abortions has allowed them to participate fully and equally in society. Now, personally, I think the notion that women need this medical or surgical advantage in order to compete on equal footing with their male counterparts is entirely and inherently misogynistic. But whatever the case, this is an example of a pro-abortion argument. It's saying that we should allow abortion because it's good and that it benefits the mother. Some have also argued that it is good and that it benefits society. For example, a popular argument has been that it reduces crime. Now, the research from which this notion is derived has been consistently debunked. It's been proven to have statistical errors and various other problems, but I can address that in the future. Again, a pro-abortion argument. And we even have those eugenic arguments which claim that it is an act of mercy for the victim. So abortion is good because it spares children from suffering or being born into a life unworthy of living. And of course, this was the same argument employed by Nazi doctors to justify the Holocaust in the life unworthy of living. Again, it doesn't matter. The point here is that these are distinctly pro-abortion arguments that claim that we should allow abortions to occur because they are good or have positive consequences. Now, in contrast, a pro-choice argument approaches the issue by dismissing the question of whether or not abortion is good or bad, whether it has positive or negative consequences, whether it is moral or immoral, as utterly and entirely irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether or not abortions are acceptable or whether they are good things. All that matters is that each individual has the chance to make that decision for herself. So the argument here is that abortion is a personal choice that the woman facing unwanted pregnancy should be allowed to make on her own. Nobody else should be able to force her to carry a pregnancy to term or to end it. Nobody, not the government, not her parents, nobody else in society can make this decision for you. But this notion is fundamentally inconsistent with the idea that abortion is a medical operation if you look at it through the scope of typical Western thinking with regards to parental rights and responsibilities. Because most individuals in Western society, including those who identify as pro-choice, tend to agree that parents have a right as well as a responsibility to exercise medical discretion when it comes to their children. In other words, we make these decisions for adolescents. We don't let a child decide whether or not to get a surgical operation. We let the parent make this decision. And it's not only true for medically necessary operations. Consider, for example, whether or not a child gets braces. Now, there may be some circumstances in which this is medically necessary, but very frequently it's entirely cosmetic. It's just a matter of straightening the child's teeth. Let's say that I have a child who desperately needs braces. I realize that he's being humiliated at school because of how horribly crooked his teeth are. So I decide to make an appointment with the dentist to have this taken care of. But my son is terrified of the dentist. Yet I, as an adult, realize that this is the best decision for my son. That in the long run, this will benefit him. Is it not my right as well as my responsibility as a parent to make sure that my son goes to the dentist, that he gets his braces, whether he likes it or not? Yes, of course it is. Most of us will probably agree that parents have an obligation to make these kinds of medical determinations for their children, because the children are not capable of making the decision for themselves. They don't have the mental or emotional maturity to do so. So in this instance, if abortion is in fact a medical operation, the decision would not be made by the individual who has become pregnant, but by her parents. Her mother or her father could force her to carry a pregnancy to term, or they could force her to have an abortion. And it doesn't stop there. Many pro-choice individuals criticize the prenatal rights movement by claiming that they want the government to decide, that they want to thrust the government into people's private decisions. But what we must remember is that not all children, not all adolescents have parents or guardians. Many are wards of the state. And where parents typically make medical decisions for their children, children who are wards of the state have these medical decisions made by the government. So if a girl is impregnated while she is a ward of the state, then the government does in fact get to decide whether or not she obtains an abortion, if we assume that abortions are indeed legitimately a medical operation. So you cannot consistently say that every individual should make this decision for themselves, that the government has no authority or jurisdiction to decide whether or not someone obtains an abortion, and yet characterize abortion as a medical operation. So either we must abandon the pro-choice rhetoric, or we must abandon the rhetoric of treating abortion as a medical decision or operation. Those are the only two options if we are to maintain ideological consistency and to be logical individuals in this debate. But most pro-choice individuals probably aren't willing to make this concession, because the characterization of abortion as a medical decision is fundamental to their argument that it's encompassed within the right to privacy. And similarly, the notion that it's a matter of choice is one of their most powerful rhetorical devices. So, if you have any comments, questions, criticisms, responses, or anything along those lines, I'll be happy to hear them out. But so far as I see, this is a profound logical inconsistency within the rhetoric of the pro-choice movement. Thank you.